Right, we're going to go over the conference briefly, go through the agenda again, have some time for questions, and welcome all of you to this year's fall conference. We've got lots of moving pieces, trying to do an in-person and an online, captioning, streaming, recording. So we're hoping it all works out, and we'll learn through any kinks here this evening. So I want to welcome you to the 2021 Michigan Mission Center Fall Conference. We are focusing on the theme of Live Prophetically this year, and that comes from Scripture and Doctrine and Covenants, section 162, verse 8. And we're going to look at that in just a moment. Hopefully you've had a chance to reflect with that. We're going to look at various parts of it over the weekend as we think about what living prophetically means for us here today. Right now, we're going to try to play and have you have an opportunity to sing Great and Marvelous Are Thy Works. This is from Community of Christ Sings number 118. That's performed by the Beyond the Walls Choir. And so we're going to play that for you now while we get our last folks into the meeting.
Sing of His mighty love, for it is wonderful.
Back to the,
Oh, there, I got you for a second.
all right, we switched off of our sound system here at Blue Water, and we're gonna go with our webcam. Sounds like that's working. All right, thank you for letting us know that. We'll work on that. You do have the scripture in your conference materials, so hopefully you could have read it yourself there. It was on the screen. We'll go through our overview of the weekend. Tomorrow morning, we ask you to start joining at 8 o'clock. It will take us some time to get everyone entered into the meeting. Again, remember to have your first and last names on your screen when you enter. We will start the business right at 8:30. We have to do some organizing right away, and then we'll pause after we get started for some worship and greetings. We hope the business session will be finished around noon tomorrow, and that will allow a time for a lunch break. And then we'll start again at 2 o'clock with presentations, which we'll mention in just a moment. Sunday, plan is to start at 9 a.m. with questions time, chat, and then worship at 11. The sessions after tomorrow morning will all be open. That is a different Zoom link. It's on the Mission Center website. We'll email it to all of you delegates after that morning session, so it'll come to your email box as well. But only you as delegates are in the Zoom meeting right now. Others can watch through Facebook streaming. We do have a couple of youth activities planned this weekend for grades kindergarten through 5th. Tomorrow during that lunch break time, before we come back from 1 to 2, there will be some activities for younger youth. It'll be in the same Zoom link for the afternoon. That's the one on the center website, and it'll come out to you. And then in the evening, in a separate place, not Zoom, but another place, is an online scavenger hunt for our junior high and senior high youth, grades 6 through 12. The information is in the conference website on how to get that meeting link if you have a junior or senior high youth who wants to participate. So we want to share a little bit more detail with you on Saturday afternoon, so you can encourage others to join us who might not be delegates. Again, it's an open session, so anyone could join in Zoom. You can just click on that link and come in, or they can watch on Facebook as well. We'll stream all of them. We'll start with the prayer for peace at 2 o'clock, and then we're pleased to have President Steve Veazey joining us in the afternoon to do a question and answer type session that we've prepared with him. That should be about an hour's session. And we'll have a brief worship to transition from there into breakout sessions. So here on site, we'll have 2 different rooms set up. In Zoom, you'll have a choice of which room you want to join. At 4 o'clock, the 2 choices will focus on new expressions. So learn about what new groups and ideas are forming in the Mission Center, and learn about how you might go about starting a new expression if you have an idea or want to explore that, and how you might be able to support new expressions if you're someone who would like to be an advocate, a mentor, or a spiritual guide to those who are starting new ministries. Also at that 4 o'clock time, the other choice will be an update on Mission Center facilities in East Lansing and Detroit. I want to share what's happening at the Campus Ministry Center and our properties in Detroit. We'll talk about what's going on, what we hope to have happen, and again, how you can be involved with what we're trying to do there. We'll have a brief break. You can come back into the main room, and then you'll have choices again. One choice at 4:30 will be Michigan Youth Camps. Talking about camping for the upcoming summer. Our current plans anyhow, nothing set in stone, but we're planning for a full summer in 2022, along with retreats and other gatherings leading up to that. Whitney Johnson, our camping coordinator, will be sharing with you on that room. And the other choice is on welcoming communities. We will have guests from Harmony, which is an organization partnering with Community of Christ to welcome LGBTQ members into our places of worship and in our groups. And so this will be an opportunity to hear more about that and resources you can get if you're interested in going further. So we hope you'll encourage people to tune in on Saturday afternoon with President Veazey, and also in these breakouts. There'll be lots of very helpful information and hopefully a good time to learn and share ways to move forward. And on Sunday morning, again, as we mentioned, we'll have the field leaders, Locke Mackay and Dina DeVorner from the Northeast Field, and then the Mission Center officers will be there as well. All right, and then worship at 11 o'clock will include communion. So we're going to ask you, if you're joining virtually, to prepare bread and wine at your location for that. We're figuring out how the whiteboard got turned on and how to turn that off if you're seeing those red marks there. All right, we're going to transition this evening now into our review of the business session of the conference. And so we want to turn your attention to the business meeting documents. Yeah, you should have received those in your email, either earlier in the week if you're registered, or this afternoon. I think I've got everyone who registered just up until a few minutes ago got the email message with the attachment. It's also available again on the fall conference website. Near the top, it says to click the documents, and we'll try now to post it in the chat. Try to get this file to everyone. Okay, I think we've got it posted in the chat, so you should be able to access it there as well if you didn't get it already. We won't go through everything tonight. You have this to review. This does have all the action items. We hope to get you a supplemental packet of additional financial reports. Some of you who've been to conference before will remember we have some more details on campground financials, camping reports. We'll get those out to you in a separate packet. They're really not needed for the business, but we're going to try to get them out to you tonight or tomorrow morning, just for your review. They will be posted on the Mission Center website and available outside of that, and there'll be time for questions when the financial officer report is given. So before we go through the business items, we want to give those of you who weren't in the prep session a chance to review and look at how we're going to use the Zoom platform. If multiple delegates are going to join through the connection, please include all the names when they're entering so that we know that you're present in the meeting and can get you a ballot for the election. So I know some of you have more than one person joining. You won't be able to use the voting buttons if we do a yes or no vote on something like a resolution if you're both joined from the same computer, but we will still be able to get you a ballot as long as we know that you're in the meeting for the election part. All the connections will be muted and you should not have the ability to unmute yourself. So we're going to use the raise hand feature to request the floor. If you want to practice that now, go ahead. It should be under your reactions feature. You can find that, or if it's not there, we found in our prep session that some people with a different version of Zoom found it under their participants tab. Now you may not be seeing either of those things right now because Zoom hides that menu, so you might have to move your mouse around the top or the bottom, and then it'll pop up your set of choices for reactions or participant, or you might see three little dots that say more. Kind of explore that. Wherever you can find that, you should see a little raise hand button. And that's how you will seek attention if you want to speak or ask a question during the conference. So once you're done speaking, you should be able to go back to the same place where you raise your hand to lower it. If you don't do that, the chair will likely lower your hand after you spoke. In some cases, a motion might be, a debate might be closed or moved to another motion. And in that case, the chair will just clear all of the reactions as we move on to the next item. So I've been seeing hands going up and down. That's good. Hopefully that means everyone has been able to figure out how to use that option. Don't think we have anyone on a phone this evening. Doesn't look like it just on phone, but if you're only on the phone, then I believe still *9 will activate the raise hand by your name to seek the floor. So at this time, I'm going to clear all the raised hands, and then I'm going to ask after that, if you want to seek the floor to test out your microphone or any item like that, then we will take raised hands for those who want to speak. Okay. So with it clear, if you want to speak, ask a question now, or want to know more about using Zoom, please raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Gloria Gregg. You can unmute, Gloria. Gloria, are you able to unmute? Okay. Gloria's off the list. Jody Broski.
Testing microphone.
Yes, sounding good for us.
Excellent.
Thank you. Linda Golder.
How am I sounding?
We can hear you here.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Linda. Jerry Heiss.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. We can hear you. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised at this time. So we're going to move forward to our next spot. Let's see Gloria again. Let's try Gloria, Greg. You finding the unmute option, Gloria? We're not hearing you yet, so we'll come back later and try to work on that again. We'll move forward with a few other points for participating in Zoom. You're going to see me looking at the screen quite a bit, so I won't always be looking at the camera so that I can recognize people and make sure our slides are in the right spot. If you have technical issues, you'll be able to send it to one of the hosts or co-hosts. As the chair, I probably won't be monitoring the chats very closely. So Linda Stanbridge is going to be our main tech contact. So you'll want to message Linda. And if you use the chats, you should see there's a little space to say, who do you want to send your message to, with a little arrow by that. And then you can change that to the person and you should pick Linda. She's going to be monitoring that mostly. We're not allowing people to chat with everyone. So there won't be a chat on the side for side conversations between delegates. You'll just be able to send a message to the host or co-host. You can change your own viewing settings. So we're going to share the slide from here. Hopefully you're seeing that, and we'll pin the chair, the podium here where I'm at. That should likely come up where you're at. And then the person speaking should come up to the top of your view, but you can change those settings on your own. We can't always control which setting you've selected to see on your computer. So you will have to, again, do that as you might like and change that if you're not seeing something on your side. Your video may be on or off at your choice. You only need to be able to hear and speak to us. To participate as a delegate, video is an optional item. I know there are some places that are joining in a group where people will connect on their own device, but they're all going to watch on one TV or projector screen. And in that case, we've tried to enable an option where you can actually shut off the incoming video on your device so that you don't take up all the bandwidth in your congregation. We'll leave it to the tech people in your site to figure that out, but hopefully that will help you if needed. But again, that's a setting on the user's side. When we come to votes, we'll have a few different options. One will be unanimous consent, where the chair will ask if there are any objections. If you have an objection, you need to raise your hand or check one of your reactions to get the attention of the chair, again, using the feature, or if you're in person, I'll be able to see. That will say that there is an objection. Doesn't mean you agree or disagree, but that you object to unanimous consent. You think we should have some other vote. But also, if you don't object, doesn't mean you necessarily disagree or agree. It just means you don't think it's worth the time of voting. You think there is going to be a overwhelming support and it will pass. So we can use unanimous consent in cases where we don't think we need a fuller vote. The next easiest option is a voice vote, but that's not going to work for us in this kind of setting with hybrid setup. So I don't think we will use that. So we'll probably use raising hands more often. So it'll be just like we were testing out. The chair would ask those in favor of, let's say, the budget, raise your hand, and you can click your raise hand feature. On the host screen, we get a number down at the bottom of how many people have raised their hand. We count here in the building, add those together. You take those for and then those against. And we'll use that where we think there's going to be pretty good support, but we might want to have something more than just unanimous consent. If it is a close outcome with hands, or we need something a little bit more countable, we'll use the yes/no vote. So this will be a chance for you to test that. Well, let's say we have resolution 28 on the floor and the chair's out. Those in favor of adopting resolution 24, please vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. People here on site will have a clicking device and a separate system online. If you go to where you found your raise hand button, you should see a yes or a no option as well. So go ahead and test that out now. Once you click it, it'll stay on that yes or no until you change it. And you can change that vote wherever you're finding that. It should be under reactions or participants. It might be under a more options part. Good, it looks like most of you are seeing that. And this is where if you're joining with someone else on the same Zoom connection, you'll only be able to show that one vote because you're only connected in one spot. So if you have another device, another phone, tablet, anything that can connect individually, again, you don't have to turn the video on. You don't even have to interact through that other device. But if you want to connect with your own name so that you have a chance to push that yes or no button, this would be where you would need to have a separate connection. We don't expect anything to be very controversial this year, but we want to get our systems working as best we can. And there may be something that is a close vote this year as well. And in this case, you can leave your vote recorded until the chair closes that. And then at that time, the chair will just clear all of the feedback. The last option is when we need to vote for multiple positions like we do in electing our board members. In that case, we're going to use an online ballot outside of Zoom. Right now, we have a practice ballot that's been sent out to all of you who are registered with an email address. Some of you have not yet seen it, probably. It came from this email address that's at near the bottom of the screen, invitations@mail.electionbuddy.com. It was sent Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. So October 30th at 9:30 a.m. If you haven't seen it, you might need to check your spam or junk mail folders. It could be in there. It could have got deleted on accident if you didn't recognize it. So that would be the place to look. That election, the test election, is still open and available for voting right now. So if you haven't tried it out, you still have time. And if you have not found it at all and you try searching for it on that date, October 30th, 9:30 a.m. Some of you, if you weren't registered yet at that point, got it later this week when you did register. I don't know the time. It would depend on when you registered. But it should be in there, invitations@mail.electionbuddy.com. If you can't find it, send me an email after the meeting. I'll try to send you a second notice. So it'll come back to the top of your inbox and you'll have another chance to try it out. In just a moment, I'll go through how we're going to use that in the business meeting tomorrow, but this is where you're going to cast your ballot for the board elections. Dick Pennington, did you have a question?
I do. Dan, I see 69 people online, which would probably include you. I'm wondering how many people are actually there in person at the activity. Can you tell me the number there?
At this point, we've got 8, including me, I think, and 9 with me. I think we have about 25 registered for in-person tomorrow morning. That's what we have online. Kathy Williamson?
Dan, I'm wondering during the sessions tomorrow, how will we hear or see the people who are in person with you if they choose to speak to a question?
Thank you, Kathy. We have a podium set up at Blue Water. Bill and Winnie, are you okay if I ask you to turn on the? Okay, so you should be seeing the podium. Our camera's not focused in right now, but there is a station here. So the in-person individuals, when they want to speak, will go to that podium and I'll recognize them just like I would any of you on Zoom. It'll come up as the name Blue Water Podium is what you'll see. And we'll get the audio figured out tonight so that you'll be able to hear them from that spot as well. Okay, I see a hand from Eric's iPhone.
Hi, Dan. I'm sorry. I forgot to unraise my hand.
Okay. No, that's Janice. All right, we're going to work through the meeting agenda at this time to look at the items of business and take questions that you might have. This is not going to be a time for debate for or against items, but just to look at what we'll be going through and how we'll go about that. Pause. Sally Hager, did you have a question? We'll have to unmute on your side, Sally.
Okay, yes, I had a question about the ballot. Where it says, vote by 10 p.m. tonight, that's just the practice. Okay, yes. And then where it says nominee E and nominee A and so on, tomorrow during the meeting, we will be told who is A and who is B and so on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we'll aim to start right at 8:30 tomorrow morning with those who are in the meeting at that time. Just like at our in-person conferences, there are sometimes people waiting at the registration table and they will get into the meeting. It just might take a few moments. We'll start with our organizing actions to organize a convention. The The first will be a credentials report. So we'll have a motion at that time to approve the number of individuals who are registered, both in person and online. And we'll ask for a vote to approve that. We'll probably try that first with our raising hand vote, since that's a majority vote. Then our second item will be approving the standing rules. Those are in your meeting documents. We can come back if you have questions about those rules, but we'll need to approve those, and that's a 2/3 vote. So we will try that one with a yes, no vote. Using the clickers here and online, you can check yes or no. We need 2/3 in favor of the standing rules. Before we adopt them, we'll take debate in amendments on them. And once we get those two pieces done, then the conference is officially organized to do business. And our first item will be nominations for Campground Board elections. So you can find these in your meeting packet. They're on page 30, 31, and 32, I believe. If you know of anyone who's going to be nominated, in addition to what's already printed, it's very helpful if you could share that with me, either tonight during our meeting or in a separate message. Because what we're going to do is accept those nominations, any final nominations, and then close the nominations so that we can create the final ballot. So just as Sally was asking about, right now you have a practice ballot. You can vote and try it out until tonight at 10. We'll close that ballot out then, and then tomorrow morning, we're going to create the actual ballot, put in the names. And at this time, once we get the nominations closed, we're going to transition to a time of worship and a welcome from our world church leaders. I'll be working on the tech side during that to get the ballot entered correctly with any final nominees and emailed out to you at that time. You can start voting right then if you want. As soon as you get the ballot, the polls will be open. You can vote throughout the morning. We will come back to it in just a moment in our agenda when we're going to take a break to help people who still haven't been able to complete it. But that's our process. We'll start the meeting right away, finish the nominations so we can get that ballot out. So everybody has quite a bit of time. You will have to get into your email, open that up. Hopefully you figure it out with the practice one. After we hear, we will have our time of worship, and then after we hear from Locke and Dina, we will transition back into our business, and that will start with a report from the Presidency. We'll try not to go through what's printed for you. You can read that, but we'll share some additional highlights and points of emphasis. And then Jessica will share the financial officer's report, and there are 2 items of business that come from that. The first is adopting the 2020 auditor's report. We'll probably use a raise hand on that. We need a majority. And then the second is the consideration of the 2022 operating budget. So we'll probably take a yes, no vote on that. So you can say yes or no. Again, these items will be open for debate and amendment before we vote. We will briefly then look at the reports of the boards. They have printed reports for you, but we'll share a minute or so on highlights from each campground. And then also a few highlights from the Mission Center teams and committees. So we ask you to review those printed materials. And then we'll share just a few points in addition. And then we'll be at our point for special orders, which is the election of board members. At this point, we would have already finished the nominations. The ballot would have already been emailed to all the delegates. But here's where we're going to take a moment to answer any questions people have about opening the ballot, voting, and then we'll take a brief recess of about 10 or 15 minutes at this point in the meeting so you can get up, stretch, use the restroom if you need to, move your Zoom window out of the way, open your email, submit your ballots. We are able to see on our ballot system if you voted or not. We don't know who you voted for, but we can see if your ballot was cast. We can also send a second notice. We can change an email address if we need to. So we can work those things out, hopefully during this recess time, if you need to. It'd be very helpful if tonight, if you haven't already, you can get that link, try out the practice ballot so you'll know how it all works, and it'll be smooth for you tomorrow. Hopefully after that 10 or 15 minutes, we'll be very close to having all the ballots done, and we will consider the polls closed. We'll come back and give you the results, and then we'll move on with our other special orders. The first will be sustaining the first presidency recommendation for Mission Center President and Financial Officer, and then the Apostles' recommendation for Invitation Support Minister. And Locke will chair the meeting for those portions. And then we will ask for a sustaining vote on the Mission Center Council leaders and staff. Again, these are all printed in your meeting documents. Okay, I want to pause. Let's see. Ron Wagner, do you have a question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. You sent out last week, I attended the Saturday meeting. You sent out the ballot and it worked fine. Then I got rid of the email. Did you send out a second email or was that just the same email?
We have not sent out a second ballot, so we've only had one test ballot.
Okay.
That one, that's it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something somewhere, so. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you for asking. So you just had that one practice ballot. The ballot with names will come out tomorrow during the meeting once we get the final nominees. Our last special order will be the consideration of a priesthood call for David Cushway to high priest. We'll have a time for David to speak to that, and then we'll take a vote to approve the call. And then our last items of business will be Resolution 1 and Resolution 2, which will each, again, be open for debate, and then we'll take a vote, likely using the yes/no options for these two resolutions. Okay, so we've tried to quickly go through the agenda, review the rules and procedures, and then we wanted to allow the rest of our time this evening to ask questions about the business items and about participating in Zoom at the various parts. So I'm going to go back through my slides here. Now that you have the overview, and I'm going to take questions one section at a time. If we have questions on the specifics, we'll pull up those documents and work through those together. So we'll start with the conference organizing actions. Are there any questions about this credentials report or standing rules? This will be a time where you can raise your hand if you have a question. Hearing no questions, we'll move on then. Are there any questions about nominations for campground board elections? You have the printed names. If you know of anyone else to be nominated, this would be a time to share that, or if you have questions about the campground board positions. Dick Pennington?
Dan, I'm wondering, at the local congregation level, person does not have to be a member of the church to be a building committee member. Is that also true at the campground or at the mission center level? Could a person be on the campground the campground board without being a church member?
Yes, I believe so. The campground operating policies have a list of requirements. I'll see if I can get those up here to look at real quick. Okay, I'm going to show on the fall conference webpage, there's a section here under nominations for expectations for elected positions. And this is the part from the campground operating policy for what a prospective board member shall meet. And it's either be an active participant in the life of a congregation as determined by the pastor. Doesn't say member, just says active participant. Or be approved by the MCP and MCFO if the prospective candidate is not an active participant in the life of a congregation. So our understanding, I don't believe we've had non-members apply yet, but we've interpreted that it probably could be a non-member as long as they are active by the pastor or mission center officer's definition. Deborah Wahayuski, did I get that right? Wahayuski?
Yeski, very nice. Thank you. Hi, Dan. I was wondering, so at the after we're done with voting, we will see the results of that vote, or are you just going to tell us what the results are?
You will not see it. What you will receive after you vote is just another email back to you that says your ballot's been submitted. Then at the end of the polls, we'll close that and then we'll announce that to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Deborah Brew?
Hi, I was wondering about the language about an inactive member of a congregation. What about the fact of some of us who are not members of congregation through no fault of our own?
Yes, so that would be if you're not active in the life of a congregation, then a person would be approved by the MCP and MCFO. That would just mean that the mission center officers are responsible for all of those non-resident and mission center general members. Are there any other questions on campground board elections, nominations for the elections? Ken Colburn?
You'll probably tell us that tomorrow when we go to do it, but the Sanford especially, you got 14 candidates. Was that the top 5, or are you going to do something in terms of getting a higher percentage on the votes?
So it will be the top 5 vote getters. It's by plurality. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, correct. In other words, you could win with fairly small numbers because if you spread them out all the way down, so you're not going to do anything to re-vote again on the highest ones or anything like that, correct?
Correct. It'll be the top 5. It would only need to be re-voted if that 5th place is tied. And then we would re-vote on all the candidates left.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the elections are not majority. You don't have to have half the members. You just need to be as a typical public office, the 5 with the most votes will be elected. If there is a tie to determine that 5th place, then we would have to go through some next steps. And we can clarify in the elections, but you can vote for up to 5 individuals. So you have 5 votes to cast. You don't have to use all 5. You can vote for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That's up to you. The ballot will randomize the names, so each of you will see it differently. That's a request we've had in the past, that alphabetical order seems to be a preference for different people. So hopefully this will help it a little bit more equalized. So you will need to look at those candidates in the materials and make sure you're finding their name on the ballot because they will appear in a random order. Okay, we'll have worship and welcome, but we'll take questions on that this time. And then we have reports from the officers. The business items are the auditor's report and the budget. So let's start with the auditor's report. Are there any questions on the audit report? Hearing none, we'll move to the 2022 operating budget. Are there any questions on the proposed budget? Okay. Hearing none on either of those, we'll move forward. Again, you can look at the report. There's no action item on the board reports. And the committee reports will be information, but there are no motions coming from them. And here we're at the part about voting. I think we've covered this. I'll see if I can think of anything else. It will be emailed to you. You'll need to complete that online, click your choices, up to 5 votes. You can abstain from voting on a particular board. So if you don't want to vote, for example, on any of the Blue Water candidates, there's a button to choose for abstain. Leave that part blank and vote in the others. So you'll have your choices on how you want to cast your ballot. Then you'll hit your choices. It'll take you to a page to view them. You'll click submit your ballot. And at that point, you should get an email sent to you that says your ballot has been submitted, and you will be done then. We'll take a recess at this point, again, to answer questions, resend notices. We'll try to do the best we can to make sure everybody has access to the ballot. You can vote before this time because it'll go out right when we get done with the nominations. So we're hoping this will work well. Any questions about election buddy or how to vote? See any questions? Move on to the next item. Sustaining the recommendation for Mission Center President and Financial Officer. And that is a combined position being recommended this year for myself in filling both roles. If there are questions about that, we can direct them to Locke or myself. Okay, how about any questions about the Mission Center invitations? Oops. See a hand up. Dick Pennington.
Who did you say the Mission Center presidency would be?
The recommendation is for myself, Dan Nowinski, to serve as Mission Center President and Financial Officer.
You will be doing both?
I will have both titles. We'll have Jessica Montague still serving in a full-time capacity as Assistant Mission Center Financial Officer, but I will have both titles. The primary reason for that is because those positions are under World Church Human Resources. They require using the World Church benefits package, pay structure, all of those things. And we have with our expansion of benefits in Michigan, we now have a healthcare package that covers our local employees, and that would be better for all of us involved to have only me under the World Church plan. And since I'll be part-time, I actually won't be participating in World Church benefits.
Okay. But well, I guess I'm just wondering, is Adam or anybody else going to be sharing responsibilities with you in the Mission Center presidency at all?
They will not. The counselors I'm asking, that'll be in the next step to be sustained, will be Linda Stanbridge and Jessica Montague, who will be full-time. Both Adam and Erica will be ending their paid positions, and they will be serving in volunteer roles as high priest, but not in the officer roles.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions about any of the appointments? Sally Hager?
Are we talking now about like the Mission Center Council?
Yes.
Okay. As I look these over, I see, some of the changes that were made, but I do not see Highland Park. In the past, I've had Highland Park as one of my assignments and have been there a few times, but I do not see them on here assigned to anyone. I'm wondering if that was, was that just an oversight? Or am I not seeing it?
No, I think that's a typo. I think you're correct. So let me make note of that. I'll look at my list. They should be on there, but they're not, Sally. So thank you for catching that.
Okay.
I can see that the typo is that Waterford is on there twice. Once for your group and then once for the last group of to be determined. And I believe Highland Park should be on the last group with Ann Arbor, Plymouth, Riverview, Troy Oaks, and Highland Park there instead. But we'll talk about that, which group they go in, but that's where the typo is. Go ahead, Sally.
I mean, I am willing to stay with Highland Park instead of Waterford, if that's, but however you determine it. I just wanted to let you know,
Yeah.
I have been active with Highland Park and it's been good. But if you, because of physical locations, if you want to change that, that's okay too. I'm just letting you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think that's a good point that we do have a couple of to be determined. Some of these have been confirmed since we printed. Some will still be tweaked, and these sometimes do change during the year as well. As Sally pointed out, sometimes once we all sit down and we talk about the boundaries and who's going to fit best where, there'll be some shifts. So our hope is to meet with our council members soon after the conference to clarify, since we have some changes this year. And then we will get those messages out to pastors before the end of this year on who will be visiting each congregation. Okay, our last special order is on the priesthood call for David Cushway. His response is in the printed materials. It looks like Dave is here, so if you might have a quick question, we didn't ask him to prepare for that, but if you want to ask him anything quickly, we could see if he's able to respond. All right, we'll look forward to hearing from Dave tomorrow. And our last two items are Resolution 1 and Resolution 2. Just to try to provide an overview of these two resolutions. They both deal with conferences in the church as they apply particularly to the Mission Center, but they also have other related pieces. So right now we are preparing tonight for a meeting tomorrow of online and in-person conference. That is because we are in a pandemic, which has been deemed by the First Presidency, and in our case, the Apostle, to be an emergency which requires special procedures. The bylaws of Community of Christ don't authorize electronic meetings like this, and our parliamentary authority, Robert's Rules of Order, states that you can only meet electronically if your bylaws allow it. Our bylaws don't allow it, but they do allow emergency procedures, and so that's what we're using to meet online. If we are not in an emergency situation next fall, we likely wouldn't have the authorization to do this. So we're going to ask in Resolution 1, pull that text up, that a proposal be submitted to the World Conference that would change the Community of Christ bylaws to authorize electronic meetings for conferences. And that would apply to all conferences of the church, since it would be in the bylaws. So that would be World Conference, Mission Center conferences, field conferences, and congregational conferences. So the resolution for us tomorrow is resolved that the Michigan Mission Center submit the following resolution for consideration at the next World Conference. And this is what we'd be submitting. So you're not going to be voting tomorrow whether you approve or disapprove of the resolution, but whether you approve or disapprove of submitting it to the World Conference. There is a proviso with this resolution, basically that says if the First Presidency or another group submits this or similar resolution to permit electronic meetings, that we would withdraw this. So the Mission Center president would have the power to withdraw this so that there aren't duplicate resolutions going to the next World Conference. So I submitted this after talking with the Mission Center Council to the World Church Resolutions team. And their feedback was that the World Church Leadership Council has already discussed this and is planning to draft a resolution. We wanted to make sure that it was on the ballot and you knew it would be on the ballot or on the agenda at the World Conference. But we don't want to muddy the waters with multiple resolutions. So we're going to propose this and adopt it and submit it unless someone else does that. And then we won't be redundant. And we wanted to do this because it'll influence, I think, our dialogue on the next resolution about Mission Center conferences. So let's just take questions on resolution 1. I see Dick Pennington has a hand.
Dan, I just simply want to say, I applaud this. It hurt my heart at the last World Conference when I was sitting there knowing that there were people from around the world that were unable to get their visas to come to our World Conference. And so to know that we are essentially forcing the issue to be before the conference, the World Conference, by our having it here. Yes, you say that they are talking about it at the World Church level, but by our passing it here at the Mission Center, first of all, it authorizes us to have it here at the Mission Center, but secondarily, it would authorize, if it's passed at the World Church, it would authorize those people that couldn't get a visa to be participating in the World Church Conference by the electronics, and stop my heart from hurting because those people could not participate in the World Conference because of our national government saying, no, you can't have a visa. I'm just so thankful that this legislation is coming to our Mission Center. So thank you to those people that have drafted this.
Thank you, Dick. I will clarify that this will just be a proposal to the World Conference to change the bylaws. So that means until they are changed, which the soonest could be is at the 2023 World Conference, we are not authorized to have electronic meetings in Michigan or congregations other than the current emergency declaration. So then that will impact our next resolution that we're going to talk about. But we're looking ahead to next year in 2022. If we don't have a pandemic, we would not be able to have an electronic portion locally because the bylaws won't get amended until at the soonest 2023. So just to clarify that passing this resolution will submit it, but it won't change any procedures until it's passed at the World Conference. And serving on the World Conference's Operation and Procedures team, I know we've talked for the last couple of conferences about how and if we can do worldwide conferences. It's a very complex question, time zones, cost, technology, but I know that team, if this were passed and authorized it, we would certainly be glad to figure that out as best we can into the future. But that is ultimately a decision for the first presidency as they organize the World Conference. Are there other questions about considering resolution 1, which would submit this to the World Conference? Okay, so we'll be voting to submit or not submit that resolution. And we wanted to have that decision first because it will impact then our second resolution or give you background for it. So our second resolution is about our Mission Center Conference policy. Our current delegate policy is printed on the next page, so you can review that policy. This is what we're currently operating under. This resolution 2 proposes 2 changes to that current policy. It would strike item E, which is providing an ex officio delegate seat for congregation financial officers. And it would strike 50 and then change it to 100 in the paragraph on number of delegates per congregation members. This is being submitted by the Mission Center officers after talking with the council without a recommendation for its adoption. We feel the question should come to you, but we do not have a position on whether we support it or not. So this conversation comes up from our current context and some of our visioning for our properties. We are thinking, as you'll see in our staff proposal, of increasing our staff to better plan activities and use our campgrounds and move mission forward. And one area where we spend a significant amount of funding, not at our own property, is in-person fall conferences, which we've had at Saginaw Valley for a number of years. But in order to have a conference at one of our sites, we have to fit in our capacity. Our largest space is where we are now in person at Blue Water. It's heated, we can have it at this time of year, but our capacity in person is 299 people. So under our current bylaws, which do not allow electronic meetings, and that won't be changed until 2023 at the soonest, we would likely not be able to meet in one of our facilities. We'd have to rent somewhere because our delegate body for this year is 464 delegates. Not that many register or attend, but that's how many could attend if they wanted to, and we would need space for that. So what we're proposing, the information on the table shows you, is if we don't make any changes based on congregations that have closed and other changes, our estimate for next year's conference is 444 delegates under our current policy. If the body wants to reduce the delegate size to fit in our 299 seat building, these 2 changes, eliminating congregation financial officers and changing the number of delegates together, would get our body under 290 delegate seats. So that's the question to you as a body. Do you want to reduce the number of delegates, or do you want to keep this current policy or make other changes that might require a bigger space, which would likely mean until we get a bylaw permission to have hybrid, we would need to keep renting a facility for a bigger group. So what's provided here are some numbers from past conferences, along with an example scenario of what would change. You can see how the number of elected or delegates to a congregation would change. Part of our rationale for how we change this, because there are other ways to reduce the number of delegates, we decided that the proposal to remove congregational financial officers was the best place because those people are appointed by the financial officer. And so in theory, the Mission Center officer making those appointments has control over those 70-some positions. And so that would take, if we have to lose seats, it would be those that are controlled by the Mission Center financial officer. Those individuals could still be elected by their congregation, they just wouldn't automatically have a seat. And then we have to change the number of elected delegates somehow. So instead of 1 per 50, it would be 1 per 100. So I don't want to open debate on this at this time, but I want to answer questions to make sure you understand Resolution 2 or any of the information. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Sally Hager?
Yeah, now you said, okay, so I'm looking at this example scenarios. One pastor. And it says for like 102 members. It says one pastor and 3 elected. Now you said 1 per 100. So how do you get 3 elected instead of 2 in that scenario?
Yes, so this goes down to here on the current policy. Each congregation shall be allowed to elect 1 delegate at large. So I didn't mention that, but that would stay in the policy. Each congregation gets 1. Additionally, each congregation gets to elect 1 for every. It's currently, it would change.
Okay. Okay, I got you though.
Yep. Thanks for asking that. So that's how those numbers work. Every congregation gets 1, and then you get 1 based on your members. So the minimum you can get is 2 elected delegates. Cheryl Seifert?
Yeah, I just have a question. If your facility holds 299 people max and you have 290 delegates, what's the incentive of anybody who is not a delegate to come and participate at the conference? Or the ability?
Yeah, we wouldn't have much room for guests at that level. So we would be able to stream as we do here, and we could set up a space in another spot here. We could have our breakout sessions and those kinds of things in other buildings, but that's a great observation that this would just get our delegates seated.
And this is the one time of the year that people from the Mission Center do gather. Twice a year.
Yes, and again, we're not presenting this with a recommendation. We're saying if we want to meet at our own facility, under our current bylaws, we'd have to make some kind of change. If we don't want to do that, we're happy to continue planning at a site like Saginaw Valley. There's a question about how much would we save annually by not renting Saginaw Valley. I think our estimated costs are usually about $8,000 for Saginaw Valley. That's the room, tech support, food, everything. That's typically our invoice at Saginaw Valley. We would have some of those same costs here if we were to organize activities, and we would have to figure out things like housing beyond what's here. Of course, at Saginaw Valley, everyone gets their own housing, food during the lunch break in particular. So there are other questions to figure out, but that's our typical expense is $8,000. And that's usually met by conference offerings. Some years we've been a little more or less, but typically that is met. Dottie Babich.
Can you tell me how many people normally go to the conference when it's at Saginaw Valley? Like just an approximate, not just elected, but everyone in attendance?
We don't have a great way to know how many guests are there in addition to delegates. I think if you look at the numbers on the delegates attending, and that's those who are there at the beginning in the credentials report, I would estimate, I think 50 is a good number of estimated guests. That would be children, some staff, spouses. That would be my estimate based on what I've seen. So I'd say take the number of delegates attending and then add about 50 more for guests.
Thank you.
And I'll just reiterate that it's possible that after the 2023 World Conference, so as soon as the 2023 Fall Conference for us, we would have the flexibility to have electronic meetings in our bylaws, in which case, we could plan based on how many people are going to attend in person and how many online. So again, you have options to simply fail this resolution, keep everything in place, to adopt this resolution, make the change, or to change this and maybe make other changes to the delegate policy. As we talked about it as leaders and with the council, there were a number of concerns about reducing the input and the number of people who could gather. And there certainly was not really a desire to do that, but we felt we should bring it to all of you to talk about and then to make a decision as a body what you would want, particularly for next year. And then once we know what happens at World Conference on the bylaws, we'll be able to revisit this again and decide what the delegate body looks like into the future. Sally?
As I look at this, the total amount of delegates, like in 2015, 508 delegates, but only 401 attended. And each year, it looks as though we are, less than 100, at least 100 delegates or more that don't come. And that then would leave room for family members and other members of the congregation to go that do not go as delegates. I'm wondering if that number, there's no way of knowing, but I'm just thinking if we had 290 delegates, how many of them are actually going to show up? Is there a way that we can have a deadline on when the delegates are going so that it can be opened up to other people coming then? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, the policy does have a deadline for when delegates are reported, and that's a month before, actually 4 weeks before. So we do know the number of delegates reported 4 weeks before, but we don't know who's actually going to attend the conference. So and these numbers kind of show that is that the number of elected seats that were open, this was at the reporting time, that we're able to fill those with alternates from other congregations. So that's a part of it as well. I think we would see less of a gap if we had fewer delegate seats because the most committed individuals, I think, would still keep coming. It's these open seats that we would probably be eliminating. So I'm not sure how much space there would be, from that 290 to allow for guests. And no, we wouldn't know who's going to attend until the day of conference.
Okay.
Mary Beth Shearer.
Hi, Dan. This is Mary Beth. Do you happen to have the numbers for the second line, the ex officio pastor and CFO? Can you split those out at all to know how many pastors versus the CFOs?
How many attended?
Correct, yes.
We don't have those records of how many pastors and CFOs have attended. I would say that it is the pastor or CFO or their designee. So again, in that case, sometimes pastors don't attend, they designate someone. Same with financial officers, they don't attend, they designate someone. But no, we do at registration, we haven't kept those records of people attending in each category. Deborah Lahayuski.
Does the pastor have to be the pastor of record, or can he give his seat up to someone else?
It does not have to be the pastor of record. It can be anyone who's designated, and it doesn't have to be a co-pastor either. So the pastor could designate any member to fill that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other hands being raised, so I hope that answers your question. Again, we think this is the most complex of our business items this year, and we reiterate that we're not offering it with the recommendation. There's not a request to pass this or support it, but we want to bring the question to the body and have a decision from you this year, and then also maybe have some feedback from that dialogue to know in future years what direction we should head with our body size and where and how we have our conferences. At this point, we're stuck with what's in the bylaws, and so we will be in person unless there's some emergency procedures until the bylaws are changed, which at the soonest would be the 2023 World Conference. Okay, those are all of our items. We're close to our end time here. So we appreciate all of you who came and participated here tonight. Hope that this will go smoothly tomorrow. We'll take any final questions. Sally, did you have one more?
Yes, back to the calendar. I was sure I had given you the dates for the 2022 Senior Leisure Camp, but that is not on the calendar. Can we add that?
Yes, we'll make sure it's on the calendar. It won't be
Okay,
in the printed materials, but
all right. I'll send you another email to make sure we have that right then. Okay, thank you.
yeah, Linda just pointed out, we have it on our camping and gathering calendar that we shared with the boards, but it didn't make it into this Mission Center events calendar, so. All right, does anyone have any final questions for tonight? Okay, we will do our best to go through the chats. I know we had a few people who requested the ballot be resent. Again, you have until 10 o'clock tonight to try out that practice ballot. Search for it in your junk or spam if you haven't seen it, from invitations at mail.electionbuddy.com. We'll try to get that resent to everyone who sends me a note about it. And we wish you a good evening. Rest well.
Just remind everyone to have their first and last official name on their Zoom account for tomorrow.
Yes, and just another reminder to have your first and last name on your Zoom account when you sign in so that we can check you off the list. Okay, thank you, everyone. We might try a few things out here with audio, but our meeting time is over, so you are free to leave the meeting. We're going to be muted, and we'll see if anything else needs to be tested before we close out. Blessings to all of you. We'll see you in the morning.